You hear a lot about cigar smokers when they're enjoying their experience with any particular cigar, about how they're picking up this and picking up that and flavor notes and nuances, yada yada. Sounds cool, but what happens if you cannot taste a goddamn thing? Let's explore and assess. You're tuned in to Smokin' Revelry. Heyo, heyo, listen what I say. Oh, sorry. Thank you guys for joining me. As I said before, you are tuned into Smokin' Revelry. I am your host, Kyle. We talk about a lot of things here. It tends to revolve around cigars, but, you know, it doesn't always have to be about cigars. It is about cigars in this video, but, you know, maybe the next one won't be. I don't know yet. Now, at the outset, I should say that I have been smoking cigars consistently, like regularly, anywhere from once a day or to just, you know, a few times a week. I try to smoke as often as I can. I don't always have the opportunity because of life and adulting and all that shit that you were looking forward to when you were a kid and then you found out was just this big-ass scam, but we're not going to get into that. If I could afford to sit around and smoke cigars, you know, more frequently than I do right now, I would. But as it is, I just try to grab the opportunity whenever I can. Technically speaking, though, I have been smoking cigars for about 20 years. Had my first cigar when I was 19. This was back when in California you only had to be 18 years old to purchase tobacco products. I tried, my first one was a flavored cigar. It was delicious. I really liked it, but then I started branching out towards mainstream cigars, I guess you could say. Cigars that were not flavored or infused. They were made by larger brands. I was kind of on a big Cohiba kick for the longest time when I was in my earlier days of smoking cigars. And, you know, I branched out and tried other ones, but I kind of stuck within a certain groove at the time, you know, because I wanted to smoke what was popular, what was cool, what other cigar smokers enjoyed. I usually would defer to my dad about that, like, you know, what should I smoke? And what do you recommend? And what's most like a Cuban cigar here in the United States? More on that probably in another video about Cuban cigars and whether or not they're that great. But anyways, it was something that, you know, I wanted to make sure that I was smoking what was, you know, wanted to smoke the good stuff. Obviously, my opinion on what the good stuff is has changed significantly over the years. But back during that time and in the subsequent years leading up to, you know, I guess you could say my Renaissance era as a cigar smoker, the last 5 years, you know, prior to that, I just smoked cigars because I enjoyed smoking them. It was a very nice, comfortable, relaxing experience. And to be perfectly honest, I mean, I wasn't really going any deeper than just enjoying, you know, the fact that I was smoking a cigar. But in 2018, when I really started to smoke cigars a lot more frequently and I started doing cigar media, cigar social media, etc., I started paying a little bit closer attention at the behest of other cigar smokers that I started making friends with about what to notice or experience when you're smoking. Because as you're smoking, you start to notice that there's like certain tastes and flavors that you're getting out of a cigar. Now, prior to that, I didn't even consider that. I just I'm smoking a cigar. I taste cigar in the smoke. I didn't, you know, my palate, I didn't even know having a palate as a cigar smoker was a thing at the time. I didn't have a palate. I didn't have any kind of refinement in that area. There was no sophistication to what, you know, I was tasting in a cigar. I hadn't developed it at that point. As time went on, I started noticing things more, especially as I started doing cigar reviews on this channel. I paid closer attention to what I was getting out of the cigar. As opposed to just smoking it, I was actually trying to see what I could get out of the smoke, what I could taste within the smoke as I was taking a puff and holding it in my mouth. I was trying to see if I could pick up on anything, and over time, I did. I started to pick up more and more and more. And the more cigars I smoked, which is the point really, the more cigars I smoked, the more I begin to get out of those cigars. I begin to notice certain things. Now, a lot of cigars, and I've said this before, and this isn't in any way to disparage the work that manufacturers and blenders and rollers put into the cigars, but a lot of cigars are very similar to each other. I will never go so far as to say they all taste the same, because they don't. I tend to get something different out of each cigar that I smoke, whether it's one that it's one that's like a go-to, like this one. I am smoking the Hecho en las Calles by Pariah Cigars, one of my sponsors, who I failed to mention at the beginning of my video. Shame on me. This channel is sponsored by Pariah Cigars and Casa Cuevas Cigars, from our casa to yours. Thank you. Anyway, so appreciate my sponsors very much. They're incredibly generous and kind, and I love them very, very much. They support me, and I will support them forever. But the Hecho en las Calles is actually my favorite cigar from Pariah. It's the one that I enjoy smoking most often. But whether it's a go-to or a newer cigar, you know, there's usually some kind of variation that I get, because, I mean, to be perfectly honest, I don't always notice the same things about cigars. I just usually remember, this is a cigar I've smoked before and I really liked it, and as opposed to a new cigar where I'm just thinking, okay, I don't know what to expect, hope I do like it. I usually end up liking something about the cigar. But a lot of cigars contain similarities to each other because there are only so many regions and countries that grow tobacco, that are known for growing tobacco. Cuba, obviously, but then you have like the Dominican, Nicaragua, Honduras, and a couple of other places. And there's the rarer tobaccos, which are harder to find and harder to get, but most of us don't smoke cigars of that caliber, I guess you could say. Those tend to be a little bit more expensive, but you can blend cigars a lot of different ways, and it is a blender's responsibility and job to try and figure out what works in a cigar. So you're going to notice different things. You're going to notice some of the same things. You're going to notice, oh wait, I've never tasted that before. You know, I'm going to have to remember that about this cigar. But overall, a lot of similarities, some differences. You may end up smoking a cigar that's like a total whopper that you did not expect, came straight out of left field in terms of flavor, strength, and other things you notice. You know, it takes time. It takes a lot of, well, it takes a lot of practice. And I mean, if you're going to practice at something, I mean, cigar smoking is not really that bad of a thing to practice on a regular basis. So maybe you're asking the question, well, what if I can't really taste anything? Like, I'm smoking this cigar, I'm not really tasting much of anything that I can actually classify or define as a specific flavor or note or whatever. And there might be a couple of reasons for that. First and foremost, you're not smoking often enough. You need to smoke more often. I'm going to encourage you to smoke cigars as frequently as possible. And make sure you're not just smoking the same cigars. Change it up. Add different cigars to your rotation. Try the recommendations of friends, the recommendations you see on social media. I mean, that's how I ended up really getting involved in boutique cigars and my enjoyment of them and discovering them. Boutique cigars are where it's at, honestly, and boutique cigar companies are making a name for themselves big time. And I believe it's the smaller brands that tend to have a lot more diversity in their flavor, in their makeup and things like that, because there's a lot more attention given to them than, say, some of the larger manufacturers. I'm not saying that the bigger names don't pay any attention, but when you have, you know, when you're like a powerhouse, like Heritage or big brand in the cigar industry, and you're cranking out cigars constantly, it can be challenging to maintain certain kinds of quality control. I have heard about some cigar smokers, friends of mine, who love certain brands and smoked it for years, but as those brands became more popular, as they became more of a bigger name, they noticed that some of those go-to cigars, some of their favorites, started to change. They didn't really, you know, hit the spot like they did before. The truth is, the reality is, you need to try different cigars, try different brands, try different blends. Don't just stick to the same old cigars all the time. You're not going to get much variation from smoking the same shit all the time. I'll never understand why some people say, well, I only smoke one brand of cigars, that's it. Or even one particular type of cigar in that brand. It's nuts to me because there's just so much out there to try, but I digress. But smoke them up. Go check out different brands. Go to your local brick and mortar lounge. Maybe there's a certain online shop that has a good selection. Or another recommendation I would like to give you is maybe look into cigar subscriptions. There are a lot of great subscription services out there that will send you a box every month with a handful of different cigars, and it's usually not the same cigars that you would have gotten the last time, maybe not even a few months ago. Subscription services really try to continue giving you variety when they send you a box, so that's a good way to go. But keep trying new stuff, keep smoking, take your time and pay attention when you're smoking. If you want, you can even make a cigar journal for yourself. Write down different things you're noticing flavor wise. When you do this, it starts to develop your palate. It makes your palate more sophisticated. When you think about foods that people eat, I love trying all different kinds of foods. I mean, yeah, I have my favorite foods, but if I'm gonna go somewhere, especially if I'm traveling internationally, I'm not gonna go try and hit up a McDonald's. One, because I don't like McDonald's that much, but two, if I'm going to a different country, I'm gonna try the local cuisine. I mean, unless it's just way off the wall, crazy, scary, and I don't think I would like it that much. Usually, I try to make sure that when I'm in a different spot in the world, that I try what, the cuisine that they're known for, or something a little bit more, varied or diverse. Otherwise, it's just gonna be one note. My life is just gonna be basic, and I don't want to be anything close to basic. Anything but basic, please. Make sure you're trying different cigars. Make sure you continue to change it up. Add different ones to your rotation. Yeah, go back to some of your old favorites when you start to, discover what your favorites are. But overall, keep trying new stuff. Keep smoking. Keep at it. Your palate will develop. It'll become more sophisticated, and you'll start to notice more about different cigars you smoke. Another reason why you may not be noticing certain flavors or different notes in cigars could depend on when you're smoking your cigar. What do I mean by that? Well, let's just say you had a meal, and after you eat, you decide to go have a cigar. Let's just say you had dinner. You had a nice dinner, and you want to enjoy the rest of your evening, the remainder of your evening, by smoking a cigar. I think about Arnold Schwarzenegger every time this kind of picture comes to mind, where he's talking about his, former father-in-law, Sergeant Shriver, who was the one who got him into cigars, and Shriver was the one who told, Arnold, after dinner, everyone ought to have a cigar. And that's when Arnold started smoking cigars, and he said his, former father-in-law introduced him to something that was really, really good. And sorry for my terrible Arnold impression, it's usually better than that. But anyway, we're moving on. Now, if you had a dinner that's something along the lines of, say you had a nice juicy steak with some potatoes, some other kind of vegetable, you drank a little wine with dinner, a cigar after that kind of a meal would actually complement what you just ate, just because I've seen this from a lot of people that post on social media. Some of my favorite people that I follow, they'll have a nice steak dinner, some vegetables and things like that, or maybe a salad or whatever. It's a nice simple dinner, not too heavily spiced, not too overpowering in terms of flavor. And they drank some wine, and afterwards they had a nice and probably fairly bold cigar, maybe something along the lines of a Maduro or a Habano, something that has a little bit of maybe a kick or spice or just a stronger profile. That's perfectly fine. Having a nice meal and then enjoying a cigar afterwards is always a good way to go. I mean, that's a really great way to wrap up your evening, and I highly recommend doing that as much as possible. At the same time, though, I would not recommend smoking a cigar after, let's say, you've had something really spicy. Now, maybe you had some Indian food, or you had some Mexican food, or you had just something that was heavily spiced or really spicy, like the kind of spicy that when you're done eating, you still feel the heat on your tongue like an hour or so after you're done eating, no matter how much water you've drank, no matter how much you've tried to kind of quell the burn after what you've eaten. You ate something that was really spicy and it kind of numbed or muted your palate. if you immediately smoke a cigar after having a meal like that, you're not going to really taste anything, because your palate, as I said, it's been very muted by the spice, the heat from what you just ate. You're not going to taste much of anything. I mean, I'm sure you'll still enjoy smoking a cigar, but you're not going to get as much out of it as you would if you had like somewhat of a milder meal, a very tasty meal, but milder. Not spicy, not overpowering, because you still want to be able to enjoy what you're tasting when you're smoking it. At least that's what I think. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe you don't care, but most people want to get a little more out of their cigar as opposed to just sitting and smoking one. As kind of a sub point to this particular reason why you may not be getting much flavor out of your cigar, also beware of what you drink. Admittedly, I am drinking a beer, and it is a Samuel Adams Cold IPA. It's got a bit of a bite to it, and admittedly, it kind of interferes with the flavor of the cigar. Now, if I stop and pause, I don't take any sips for a while, it comes back, but I usually tend not to drink beer with a cigar. I mostly drink whiskey. Occasionally I'll have some wine. There's some really great wines that go with the cigars, mainly dry wines, I will say, at least in my experience. A good dry red wine will go great with a bolder cigar. I don't really know what white wines will go with cigars. I've never really heard of any white wines or sparkling wines or champagnes or anything that will go with a cigar. Try it if you like, but I find that a nice dry red wine like a Merlot or a Cab or something like that will go really great with a cigar. Of course, as I just said, there's whiskey, and there's even some different types of rum that will go good with a cigar. Overall, it tends to be like the darker liquors and darker wines and things like that will go well with a cigar. But if you're drinking something that is like just a beer, wouldn't really work. I don't think a margarita or tequila would go very well with a cigar, at least not that I've tried. What you drink can also make a significant difference on what you taste in a cigar. So just keep those things in mind. Another reason why you may not taste anything in your cigar, you may hear it actually in my voice. You may hear it in how I sound. My allergies have been giving me a run for my fucking money. I am not even exaggerating when I say that. I had to make an emergency doctor's appointment to go find out what's wrong, because like my allergies were affecting me in an almost debilitating way. I could barely breathe. I couldn't really, my nose was just getting so stopped up. I was just like, I was miserable. It felt like I was actually sick, like I caught some kind of weird cold or virus. I felt like, just it was getting bad. And of course I went, and they, recommended some medications that I take and prescribed me something, and it helped. But truthfully, my nose has been I'll be honest, my nose has been fucked. My sinuses have been fucked. Now, thankfully, it's clearing up, and I can taste this cigar better than I have the last couple. The last two cigars I smoked prior to this one was the Geary by Family by Loyalty Cigars, and then one of my regular go-tos, Casa Cuevas Habano, which is actually the first Casa Cuevas I ever smoked. I got a bunch of them on my humidor. I enjoy them regularly. But those two cigars, prior to this one, I barely tasted anything. All it really tasted like was kind of a smoky, mesquite, ashy flavor. It was not really pleasant. I mean, I smoked them because I never like to waste a cigar, even if it's a cigar that, is provided by a sponsor or was gifted to me. I don't care if it was a cigar I didn't purchase myself. I don't waste cigars. I will smoke it down as far as possible until I either can't anymore or whatever. Either it gets too bitter and too hot and I can't finish it, or, I can only go so far. It only burns so far, but I tend not to waste my cigars. But this one is the first one in a while that I was really able to taste. But if you have really bad allergies, you have sinus issues, definitely a lot of us, I know many of us who caught COVID at any given point. I caught COVID for the first and only time last year. Actually, a couple weeks after I got back from TPE in Vegas. Apparently somebody there decided to give me COVID, so go figure. It was still worth it. But I came home and I felt like I was getting sick. And then I tested. I was negative. Tested again later. I was positive. And about a week or so after catching COVID initially, or at least being testing positive, I decided to smoke a cigar. Now, the mistake I made was smoking a cigar I had never smoked before, and as such, I could barely taste a damn thing. Again, it was that kind of like smoky, ashy, mesquite kind of flavor, which not much of a flavor at all, but it was so muted. It was pathetic. It was sad, and it was disappointing, and it kind of freaked me out a little bit because prior to that, I'd never experienced anything like that. And I was asking people who had COVID that smoked cigars, I'm like, hey, how long did it take for you to get your taste back? And like, oh, it took me weeks. And I'm like, God damn it. I review cigars for, my YouTube. I mean, what the hell am I going to do? Thankfully, it didn't last longer than a couple of weeks. I mean, I could taste just about everything else, but cigars, I think because it's a little bit more of a spectrum of flavor and how you taste it on your palate, that I wasn't able to really taste it at all. Not in any real significant way. I was worried, kind of freaked me out a little bit, but that's just how my mind works, and I ended up getting my taste back just like I'm getting it back right now. So it could be for health reasons. It could be because you got sick, because maybe you have allergies, or maybe you have some kind of sinus infection or blockage here, which I would highly recommend that you go see your doctor if it persists and it does not quit. And definitely if it interferes with your enjoyment of cigars, I mean, that's no good. We don't want that. So go get checked out. Try to get a good medication to help clear you out up here. Get a fucking neti pot. I'm actually very much considering that because I've just been so blocked up here. It's driving me insane. I can barely breathe, and it doesn't help at night because I have sleep apnea. I have a machine that I use. I need to fucking breathe. So whatever you got to do to remedy that, it can definitely interfere with your enjoyment of cigars. It can mute your palate, and you're not really getting anything out of the cigar. So go to see a doctor if you have to. Go find a good medication that will help you out with that. And hopefully within a week or two, you'll start to taste your cigars again. Our sense of smell is heavily tied into our sense of taste. They pretty much go hand in hand. So if something's mucking it up here, it's probably going to muck it up on your palate, on your taste buds. So yeah, definitely do whatever you got to do to remedy that. And a fourth reason why you might not be getting much out of your cigars in terms of flavor notes and things like that, you're not really getting anything, you might just need to do something to cleanse your palate. And I've heard there's actually some really simple ways you can cleanse your palate, and a couple ways that I know of is drink some water. Pure and simple. Drink some water. That is one of the best ways to cleanse your palate. And when I say drink some water, don't flavor your water. I flavor my water sometimes with like Mio or something like that throughout the day, just because I kind of like it. And also my Mio has like a little caffeine and B vitamins, so there's also health, benefits from that. Drink a nice, not ice cold cup of water, but drink some relatively cold water, swish it around a little bit, and then, let it cleanse your palate. Another thing you can do, from what I understand, is you can consume something with some sugar in it. I don't know if I wouldn't necessarily recommend like putting like a spoonful of sugar on your tongue. I know they say it helps the medicine go down, but in this case, there's really no medicine you need to help go down. You're just trying to cleanse your palate, but maybe have some kind of a sweet treat. The taste buds that taste sweetness tend to be, pretty strong on your tongue. And those taste buds are, I believe, are on the tip of the tongue. You're going to taste sweet things a little bit more strongly, and there tend to be sweeter notes in cigars. Usually you can taste something like coffee or chocolate or something along those lines, some kind of spice, and you want to kind of awaken your sensitivity. So have something a little sweet. Again, drink a little bit of wine, because wine tends to have a little bit of sweetness to it. I wouldn't recommend having an overly sweet wine, but maybe have, a dessert wine or something like that to kind of awaken your taste buds and your palate to receive a cigar properly when you're smoking it. There's other methods that I've heard of. Unfortunately, they elude me right now, but those are a couple. A simple Google search can probably help you find out what would be, best for you to cleanse your palate, the most practical way. But sometimes you just gotta, reset. You reset the palate, drink some water, eat a sweet treat, drink a little bit of wine, whatever other methods, practical methods there are to help cleanse your palate so that way you can better taste a cigar. I highly recommend doing that. But finally, I want to address a certain, I guess you could say, demographic within cigar smokers. I don't think there's many of us who have this issue out there who enjoy cigars regularly. Maybe you just can't, no matter what you do, you can't really get much of any of those notes that you hear people talk about so much. It's unfortunate. There are some people who just, their sense of taste, their palate, it's not as sensitive as others. It doesn't pick up on things. It does as much as other people. You know, I know people with palates so sensitive they can reverse engineer food. For one thing, my stepmom, she has such an incredibly sensitive and refined palate. She could eat something that's maybe store-bought, and she can deduce what's in it. I mean, the vast majority of the ingredients in that particular food, and she can reverse engineer it, make it herself in her own kitchen, and she usually ends up making it better than what came from the store in the first place. I mean, anything homemade is going to be better than store-bought. It's a talent that she has that just continues to amaze me every time I go over there and she cooks for us, and it's just kind of crazy what she picks up on. My palate, nowhere near that refined or sophisticated. She has a gift. I do not have this gift. Now, I can taste certain things, pick up on flavors that maybe other people can't. I've had people say to me, like, how are you tasting that cigar? I don't taste that at all. I'm like, I don't know. Same thing. Other people who smoke cigars, who do it regularly, and they actually, you know, their whole thing on social media is to really break down a cigar. They taste stuff in a cigar that I've smoked that I don't taste, and I'm like, how are you getting that? They're like, I don't know, I just do. It's different for everyone. Same thing with certain types of alcohol, whiskey, wine, and stuff like that, things I've already mentioned. Some people taste things in those particular spirits that I've never ever picked up on, ever. And then there's others, maybe this is you, where you're not picking up on much of anything. Now, you enjoy the experience. You enjoy, you know, drinking some wine, some whiskey, smoking a cigar, but you're not really picking up on anything that is, well, deeper than just, say, kind of the standard flavor of, you know, a cigar, which obviously is tobacco, the main ingredient, the only real ingredient in a cigar. That's okay. It's honestly okay. I wouldn't worry about it. I wouldn't freak out or feel like you're just like, you know, it's ruining your cigar experience. Tobacco itself has a very distinct flavor profile. Doesn't necessarily matter where it's from. It kind of has a base flavor profile that when you're smoking it, most people pick up on. You're gonna smell it, you're gonna taste it. All I can say is that there is still plenty of enjoyment from that. Even if you're not picking up on the more subtle notes or nuances of your cigar, you can still enjoy it with really no problem, in my opinion. It's not something that I would worry myself over. Now, me personally, I mean, because I do what I do, I need to pay attention to that stuff. I need to notice those things, because then I can more accurately and better promote the cigar, and that way people kind of get excited about what they're going to taste out of it. And maybe they'll pick up on something I didn't. Who knows? But I need to have that continuously developed for me personally. But if you don't have that particular, you know, but if you're not picking up on these things in your cigar, but you still enjoy it, perfectly fine. Don't worry about it. Don't be envious or, you know, beat yourself up over it. If you enjoy smoking cigars, it really doesn't matter necessarily what you taste in it, as long as you enjoy it. So keep enjoying. And if you're not picking up on those subtle flavors, don't worry about it. Just keep smoking and enjoying. Keep trying different cigars. Who knows? Maybe your palate will awaken. It will awaken from its slumber, and you'll start tasting things you've never tasted in a cigar before. Just keep smoking different cigars. You never know. Well, everyone, I do believe that is really all I have to say in regards to this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it informative. I hope it, you know, gave you a better idea of what to look for when you're smoking your cigars and how to better enhance your cigar experience in terms of what you taste. I really hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, please be sure to like this video. Leave a comment down below. I really do enjoy engaging with you guys. And of course, if you haven't already, please subscribe. I would love to see more of you guys engaging in these videos. I love making these videos for you, and I love continuing to grow my audience so that way I can connect with more people in the cigar community. So please subscribe if you haven't, and make sure you ring that bell so you'll be notified whenever I post a new video. Again, I hope you guys are doing well. Please take care of yourselves, stay safe and healthy. Of course, keep it smoky, and I will see you guys next time.